Hey everyone, I'm your host Vince with the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and on this episode of Astral Encounters, we're going to explore some of my out-of-body experiences involving aliens. Now, when I first started astral projecting, I had no idea that it was possible to contact or be contacted by aliens in the astral dimension. Since a young kid, I always believed in aliens, and I would watch TV shows and movies all the time about UFOs and extraterrestrials and alien abductions. And my understanding back then was that these were intelligent entities from other planets and galaxies within our physical universe. And they were coming to Earth in spacecrafts, which people typically refer to as UFOs for perhaps scientific or even spiritual motives. And of course, there are many reports and stories and theories regarding the purposes of these visitations and abductions, ranging from benevolent to malevolent. But regardless of the details, I was convinced they were real. But again, the idea of running into these entities during my out-of-body experiences never even crossed my mind. So when I projected from my body one day and found them surrounding me, let's just say I was more than just a little surprised. In fact, I was straight up horrified, because the truth was that the idea of these entities having the technology and the capability of taking people in the middle of the night and doing experiments on them undetected with no consequences was really frightening. I mean, with all the people that go missing around the world on a daily basis, who knows how many of these disappearances are actually alien abductions in which the people are never returned. I'm not saying that's the case, although I've heard abduction reports that support the idea, and I definitely think it's a possibility. And I had a lot of dreams involving aliens as a kid, which I think is a bit unusual because, as far as I know, most kids don't dream about that kind of stuff. I remember one dream vividly from when I was probably 6 years old. And in the dream, I was an alien, and I was looking in the bathroom mirror, and I had green skin and big black eyes, and I was eating a person. And in the dream, it was totally normal. Like, that was who I was, and I was okay with that. It wasn't scary or weird. And I think that fact, in and of itself, is a bit scary and weird. I used to have dreams that aliens would come into my room and take me, but I could never remember what happened after that. I would kind of force myself to block it out. Kind of like when you're having a bad dream and something horrible is about to happen, and you wake yourself up, only I don't remember actually waking up at that point of the dreams. That would just be where the memory ended. And in some of these dreams, I would experience a strong energy in what I now know is my root chakra. And that was always a mystery to me. I never knew why I would experience that energy. Sometimes it would be so strong it was almost painful. But as I got older and started meditating and doing energy work and opening my chakras, I realized what that energy was. But why I would experience it as a kid during these alien dreams would remain unknown to me until I started encountering these entities during my astral projections. So before we dive into my experiences, I want to clarify what I mean by the term alien. The aliens that I'll be referring to are non-human entities that have a similar appearance to the typical aliens that are portrayed in most movies, television, and books. They generally have a small, skinny body, a large, triangular-shaped head, and big black slanted eyes. However, I don't mean to imply that these entities are from another planet or galaxy. My experiences with them is nearly exclusively in the astral dimension, which informs me that these beings exist and operate there. Whether they have bodies in our physical dimension and project their consciousness into these higher dimensions, similar to humans doing astral projection, or if their base level of reality is the astral dimension and they're able to shift into the physical dimension, that's another story for another episode. For this one, we're going to focus on some of my early experiences with these aliens during my astral projections. One of my first encounters with aliens was during an astral projection in which I was flying over an astral neighborhood, and there was something calling me to this one particular house in the distance. Like I was drawn to it for some reason. So I entered this house, flying through a large sliding glass door, and I decided to boost my lucidity by doing a reality check. So I looked at my hands, and then I rubbed them all over my face, and it instantly increased my level of awareness. And it felt more real than touching my face in physical reality. And this is a technique that I use to ensure that I'm perceiving what actually exists in the astral dimension. Because if you let your awareness slip and you lose a strong mental focus, the experience can begin to shift into a lucid dream in which the subconscious mind begins projecting manifestations into your perception. And so these reality checks and these lucidity boosts, they serve to ensure that you're firmly grounded in the astral dimension and actually experiencing what is there. So I was inside this house, and I suddenly became aware of someone or something inside the house with me. So I turned around, and I was shocked to see an alien standing by the door that I had flown in through. It had a small, skinny body and a large insect-like head, almost like a praying mantis head. And I get a very strange feeling when trying to remember this part of the experience. It's almost like I'm not supposed to remember. I mean, there seems to be some kind of memory block, as if this entity had intentionally erased this part of the experience from my mind. I knew something happened in the house with this entity, but I don't know what. So one moment I was standing in this house with this alien, and the next thing I knew, time had somehow passed, and this mantis entity was gone. And I began to realize that things were becoming too real. It was like my consciousness was in such a heightened state of awareness that this dimension now seemed to be my base level of reality, and my physical life seemed like a dream or an illusion. And I became worried that I was going to be permanently stuck in this dimension. And with that thought, I jumped back out through the sliding glass door and flew back into my body. So I haven't had many encounters with these particular Mantis type aliens. The majority of my experiences involve aliens that are very similar to the typical gray aliens. Really, the only difference is that their skin is a light orange color rather than gray. So my first experience with these beings happened several years into my astral projection practice. So one morning I decided to leave my body, and I was soon overcome with paralysis, which is a sign that you're entering the mind awake, body asleep state, which happens just before the projection. And suddenly the presence of several beings came into my perception, and they were really close to me. And suddenly this really disturbing drone sound just engulfed me. It was like I was hit with this energy that felt artificial and had a metallic quality to it. And it was different from the normal energetic sensations that take place at the onset of an out-of-body experience. It seemed as if this distressing energy was coming directly from these entities, which at that point I was still unable to see, but I could feel their presence and I sensed them. And so this eerie tone coming from this energy rang through my body and my mind, and it chilled me to my core. It was really disturbing, like straight out of a horror movie. So at that moment, the room around me came into focus, and the first thing I saw was an alien standing to my right side, looking directly at me. It was short and skinny. It had a large triangular head with large black slanted eyes, and it had light orange skin. And looking into those big black eyes invoked an intense wave of fear to wash over me, and my heart plummeted inside my chest, and I panicked and forced myself back to physical reality. So after this experience, these encounters became more and more frequent. I would shift from my body, and these aliens would be standing around me. Sometimes they would be bent over, closely inspecting me. And during a lot of these experiences, what happens is that I'm projected from the physical dimension, but my astral body is still occupying the same space as my physical body. So my consciousness is fully in the astral dimension, but I'm still lying in the same space. So you commonly hear astral projection being that you need to float up or pull yourself out of your physical body. But in reality, it's simply a shift of consciousness. So your consciousness traverses dimensions, leaving the physical dimension and entering the astral dimension. And no movement or separation from the physical body is actually necessary. Of course, if you want to explore the astral dimension, then you'll have to start moving around. But anyway, during another one of my early experiences with these aliens, I shifted into the astral dimension, and I was horrified because an alien was bent over me with its face less than a foot away from mine, and it was staring right at me. And it felt like it was looking into me, like looking into my soul. And its head was twitching and jerking from side to side, like some kind of robot with a glitch. And this was really disturbing, but also an interesting aspect of these entities. They seem to possess a type of mechanical quality. Their movements never seem completely organic or natural. They tend to be unnaturally stiff and jerky. And this is an interesting correlation with many alien contact and abduction cases in which the person is informed that these beings are actually some kind of biological mechanical hybrid. So anyway, my early encounters with these aliens usually always started the same. I'd leave my body and they would be standing around me waiting for me to enter the astral dimension. And in the beginning, I would panic and quickly re-enter my body. One time, I shifted into the astral dimension without quote unquote separating from my physical body. So I was still lying there, but I was now perceiving into the astral dimension, and I was now occupying my astral body. And I was looking up at an alien standing over my body, and it was actually standing on my bed. And it bent over and reached into my mouth and reached its hand and lower arm all the way down my throat. I mean, I could feel its fingers moving around inside of my chest. And of course, it was reaching inside of my astral body, not my physical body. But I was extremely disturbed and snapped back into my body. So these types of experiences were happening on and off for a while. And then things got turned up to another level. And they started actually pulling me out of my body. So this one morning, I was lying in bed meditating, like I usually did before projecting from my body. And I felt something softly grab my ankles. And I felt like I was gently being pushed and pulled back and forth, more and more. And I was pulled right out of my body. And suddenly I feel a strong feeling of movement, like I'm being pulled at a high speed. And I start to see my surroundings. And it looks like I'm being dragged through this long metallic corridor. And I can't see who is pulling me, but I can still feel their hands on my ankles. And the pressure at my ankles got stronger and stronger. And it soon started to hurt. And at that moment, I realized that I shouldn't be feeling pain. And that was a big red flag. You know, if whoever was taking me was friendly or benevolent, they wouldn't be causing me pain. And I immediately got the feeling that whoever was taking me didn't have good intentions. And I willed myself back into my body and ended that experience. But this would happen again and again, just getting pulled out of my body, sometimes without even having the intention of astral projecting. And there's an interesting correlation here with the out-of-body experiences and the aliens. I remember reading in one of Whitley Strieber's books, in which he discusses his alien abductions, that he was actually taken out of his body by these aliens, and they essentially taught him how to astral project. So after reading that and seeing the similarity with my experiences out of my body with these aliens, it added another layer of confirmation of my own experiences. So, in my future experiences in which I was pulled out of my body, I was able to see that these were the same aliens that had been visiting me in the astral dimension. And when I stopped fighting off these experiences and allowed them to progress, that's when things got really interesting. And we'll dive deeper into those experiences in the next episode. So I'm going to wrap it up here. In the next episode, we'll explore how my experiences with aliens evolved over time, some of the different types of aliens I've encountered and communicated with over the years, and what I learned about them and my relationship with them. A relationship that I had been completely unaware of, and one that provided insight into other aspects of my own self, which exist in other dimensions of reality. So thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out my book on Amazon.com, Astral Projection and Lucid Dreaming, Spiritual Revelations and Out-of-Body Experiences in Higher Dimensions. And also check out the other podcasts on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Talk to you next time.
Right. Wow, that sounds cool though.
That's interesting because I'm sure you've heard of the new. This is kind of the new word on UFOs, is that they're not interstellar beings, that they're interdimensional beings now, and that these UFOs, they propel kind of like you said, like with their mind, but to be translated into the physical realm, we kind of see them as, like a disc-shaped anti-gravity ship instead of a more interdimensional mind attention directed gravity propulsion. Something like that. I don't know. I try.
I get what you're saying. For sure.
Cool.
For sure. Well,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I get it too.
I can't speak particularly on UFOs, but I've had countless experiences with aliens during my out-of-body experiences, and so from my own experience, these entities that we consider aliens. So, for example, gray aliens. I've encountered them countless times during my astral projections, and I can say for sure that they operate. They exist in these higher dimensions, and whether they're kind of like us. So, for example, we primarily exist here in the physical dimension, but we have the ability to tap into, to access other dimensions, whether that's their situation or maybe some of them are actually primarily based in these higher dimensions. Maybe they can kind of come down into this one. What their situation is, I'm not exactly sure, but you will encounter these entities in these other dimensions. And I mean, I've had UFO encounters myself here in the physical world, and I've considered what you said too. I've done a lot of research into aliens and UFOs, and I've had the thoughts that perhaps they're not just physical spacecraft. You know what I mean?
Right. That's fucking mind.
It kind of seems like, an individual who is practicing in, astral projection and things like that, and also has like a better understanding of the different realms and dimensions, maybe more capable of, or maybe more aware of those types of events happening or recognizing them.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my first physical UFO sighting happened after I started my astral projection practice, and after I started encountering these entities during my out-of-body experiences. And I do think there is a connection, and there are some pretty interesting connections with other individuals. So, for example, a pretty famous author on the subject of alien abductions and UFOs is Whitley Strieber. In one of his books, he explains how these aliens, so these experiences, his abductions, started allegedly through physical abductions, but then these aliens eventually taught him how to have out-of-body experiences and start to access these like spiritual type of abilities that we all have. So there's some pretty interesting correlations there.
Wow. Yeah, that's
Do
insane.
you think then, with that being said, that this technique is something that was maybe taught to us from aliens, to our ancestors, and just something that was
Like a
then
gift.
passed generation to generation? Yeah, like a gift from the gods, I guess.
Well, what I think is that what I know actually is that this is a natural phenomenon. It's a natural process, and it happens every time we fall asleep. And you can know this. It's not just a belief, but you know this after experiencing it for so long. It's like, do you know that? I don't know.
Let's go a little deeper. Do you think, since it's natural, you think we were created like that on purpose?
Well,
You don't have
most
to.
natural. What is most natural is that this process takes place without our conscious
Right.
awareness.
Okay.
And so the key is to introduce that conscious awareness into the process, and then you go along for the ride and you see what's actually happening kind of like behind the scenes. And so I think what is most natural is for this all to be happening behind the scenes. But so once we introduce our consciousness into the mix and we're aware of these experiences, that's when this whole new realm of experience opens up to us. And I do think there is a design to that. I think that there's a reason why we usually are not aware of these experiences. I think the purpose of this physical world is kind of to be limited and separated from this higher spiritual reality that we actually kind of like come from, and so I don't know if you want to consider it like cheating when we consciously enter these higher states and experience these revelations of who we really are beyond this physical world, because in a sense you can consider that this kind of this is what I think. We're here in this world
Yeah.
to learn and grow, and experience these challenges, and kind of like to temporarily forget who we truly are as higher spiritual entities. And these experiences allow us, these astral projections and higher level experiences allow us to remember who we actually are beyond
Right.
this physical body.
Right, because it's like how it has been said. We're not human beings with spirits. We are spirits inside of a human body, in a way. And this is just our vehicle. The vehicle that our spirit is being able to move through.
It's our
in a
UFO.
sense. Yeah, it's our UFO, exactly.
I'm definitely one to believe that we're here on Earth. We can't be the only beings on the planet in the universe. So I do believe that aliens exist, and you've said that you've encountered aliens. Have you encountered one kind, many kinds?
Yeah, I have encountered many kinds of different aliens. Now I say aliens because they look like the typical alien that is portrayed in our society, in this culture.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that. Do they look like what we've been told that people have seen? So yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, the most common ones that I've seen all have similar features. Even the different groups have similar features. Typically, you know, the large head, the big black slanted eyes, like small skinny bodies. And the different groups seem to have different agendas, and they have different degrees of like spiritual awareness. You know, so for example, one group that I would experience quite often, they seem to be more of a negative group. And I've experienced others that were actually pretty enlightened. And so, yeah, they're all different types, and they all have different game plans. In this one group, they had light orange skin, and they would surround me as I would leave my body. They were really frightening. I got a really bad vibe from them. When you're out of body, you can sense energy almost directly. And so if you have an encounter with like a higher level enlightened being, you'll feel this energy of love and light from them. And, you know, if you have an encounter with a lower level negative entity, you will experience this lower level of energy as well. And so this was the experience I had with this one particular group. And yeah, I'm not sure why, but they had some interest in me, and I've had so many experiences with them. I don't know where to start, but I've had some really enlightening experiences with other groups. Some of them have given me information about the nature of my past lives. And when I say past, it's not actually a past life, but it's actually a concurrent life in another system of reality. Some really wild stuff. I'll give you an example. This one entity, this is an alien type being, appeared to me during one of my out-of-body experiences, and a telepathic link opened between us, and suddenly I was flooded with knowledge and memories. And I started to remember that I am living another life as this alien, this species of alien, if you want to call it. In another level of reality, I am one of these aliens, and the entity that was with me during this experience was actually very close to me. Like, I experienced this strong bond. Like, we have this really strong relationship in this other life. And it's not a past life, but it's taking place the same time as this life.
So we have multiple energy bodies and lives that are going on at the same time.
That is what I have experienced. Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Interesting. Yeah, really. I mean, that we could be so divided in energy bodies, it's confusing. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Right. I've had experiences with what is called the higher self. And the higher self is essentially like the peak level culmination of who we are as spiritual entities. And these are who we are as like a fully realized consciousness at the highest level of our existence. And the idea is that who we are as these physical, beings and personalities is just such a small aspect of an actually much greater entity of consciousness. And so when you have an experience where you integrate or you merge with your higher self, and you tap into this highest level of consciousness that we are, you experience the fact that who you are as a physical individual is just one of many, many, many.